Hello, Internet. I'm Adam Kujawa, Director of Malwarebytes Labs, here to talk to you today about some cybersecurity tips concerning going back to school. This is for you parents that may be listening, worried about what your kids might be doing at school or how to keep them safe. Or if you happen to be someone who's still in school, then please listen up and you'll hear some good tips. So we're going to start off with just kind of going over some basic tips, kind of pulling from one of our blog posts, and then after that we'll do some Q&A. So if you've got any questions, please submit them. Be happy to answer them as much as I can. We'll be at this for a little while, so feel free to start the conversation. So starting off, the first thing I want to talk about is how kids tend to want to do what other kids are doing as well. I mean, this has been the case since I was a kid. I'm sure this was the case since my great-great-grandparents were kids. All right. But these days you've got things like YouTube channels, you've got gaming sites, you've got the pressure to put yourself out there on social media and things like that. As a parent, it's probably important to stay abreast of what's going on with this kind of stuff. Technology was such a huge part of my life, and I'm in my 30s, so I can imagine how it is for kids these days. And you should be aware, what are the big games coming out that your kids want to play? What is it that they want to do on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll go more into stuff like that, into video publishing and social media and the dangers surrounding it. Excuse me. The next thing I want to talk about was taking kind of a timeout from using the devices or from playing games or for whatever it is they do. Now, it's kind of a surprise coming from me. If anyone knows me, I spent the majority of my childhood in front of a monitor, and I'm fine. But the reality is that you need to have some out time. You need to be able to get away from it. And personally, if you want any reason to stop playing a game for a little while, in my experience, the more you play a game, the less fun it becomes. It becomes a job, it becomes something you just have to do. So instead of basically either if you're a kid who says, I just have to play my game all the time, no, you really don't, man. Take a break. You'll probably be better at it after you come back. If you're a parent and you're trying to tell your kids, hey, you can only play this game or do whatever for an hour, and they're yelling at you or whatever, make it a reward. Make it a thing that they get for doing well. I'm sure they have chores. I'm sure they have homework that needs to be done. Reward them with some playtime, with some, extra, online currency, I guess, for the game if they do very well. Things like that. I mean, getting involved in what your kids are really passionate about. And these days, a lot of that surrounds certain video games. It's important. It's important to them. It's important for you to understand what they're on about, what they're doing, and try to promote a healthy relationship with games and with computing and things like that, by having them understand that there is a good reason to not be playing it constantly. Next thing I wanted to talk about was basically personal information. So I'm sure you've heard all this before many times, but try to refrain from posting any personal information online, even in your social media accounts or something like that, on your YouTube page, etc. You need to look around and make sure that you're not posting a photo that has your address in the background, or a bill, or some other, your phone number, some other identifiable information that could be used to track you down or potentially hurt you, by anything from as mild as just a school bully to as bad as a child predator. So you need to watch out for that kind of stuff. If you're a kid, you know what to do. I mean, obviously the intent is to go out there and be like everyone else, and do what everyone else does. But the reality is that you're just putting yourself out there to be hurt. All right. Besides, I mean, people like it when you're a little more mysterious, right? So for parents, keep an eye on not only what your kids are posting, and yeah, I know it's an invasion of privacy, but honestly, at the same time, they're putting it on the internet, which is available to anybody. So don't feel bad about checking on your kids' social media and making sure they're not posting your address on there. Alternatively, even if your kids do follow the basic tactics of making sure that they're staying secure by not posting their class schedule on Facebook or something, look at the kids who go to class with your student. It's possible that there might be some bullies. It's possible that they may be doing some doxing, basically trying to find out the address and phone number and any other information about the student, and then posting it online so they could be trolled or harassed or anything like that by other bullies or by just rando online trolls. So keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. These days that the internet is not as user-friendly as it used to be, I guess, in that sense. The next thing to talk about is kind of general security. Do your kids know how to make a secure password? I mean, if they don't, then you should teach them right now. There's a really great comic on xkcd.com that I love pointing to. And if you are familiar with it, you know what I'm talking about. But it basically tells you how to make a secure password. Okay, you could take, a 7-character word and then add special characters and numbers, and that's really not as secure as it could be, and it's a lot harder to remember. If you create a passphrase, something that's like 5 or 6 words with spaces if possible, and then some numbers and some extra, special characters in there, it could become something that you would easily remember, that you wouldn't have a hard time reciting, but at the same time makes the password itself so much more secure that it's so much harder to break. Okay, so make sure your kids know that. Your passwords don't have to be some garbled combination of letters, numbers, and special characters that's impossible to remember, so you have to write it on a sticky note and put it on your monitor. You don't have to do that. Just a phrase, something you're used to. Maybe a lyric from your favorite cartoon theme. I mean, I've done that before. So, in addition to just general password security and sharing information security, physical security when it comes to what connections to connect to and how to secure your laptop, that's kind of where we're going to go to next. So if your school has like a public Wi-Fi or something, or or your kids' laptops have an automatic join function, or the phones do too, you may want to disable that, especially if there's for generic routers like Linksys, or for ATT Wi-Fi or Xfinity or anything like that. It's easy for a cyber criminal to set up a fake access point and basically pretend to be a network, and then your kids connect to it automatically, and then all kinds of bad stuff happens. All right, but regardless, you should teach your kids about what does it look like to have someone who's trying to do what we call basically a honeypot kind of thing, where they've got this particular network up in school or nearby, I don't know, and the kids connect to it, and then their information is stolen using a man-in-the-middle attack, or they're rerouted to something that may download and install malicious software on the system. So there's lots of things that could happen. So make sure that your kids are aware of the dangers of public Wi-Fi and how to spot a potentially fake access point. And sometimes these are really hard. Sometimes it's as simple as, connect here for free internet. Like, I wouldn't trust that. I don't know about you, especially if I was somewhere like in Vegas or even somewhere where it didn't belong, like at school. But even if you see multiple networks, you might see 2 that say school Wi-Fi, and then wait, which one's the correct one and which one's the bad guy? So make sure your kids are aware of that kind of stuff, and talk to them about connecting to unknown networks. I mean, it's just like talking to strangers, really. If you don't trust the network, if you don't know it, then maybe you should be pretty cautious around it, and find someone who does know the network and can speak for it, and at least confirm, like a teacher or something like that. As far as laptop and computer security goes, I mean, we want people to run security software, obviously, and you should download and run it on your kids' laptops, on your home systems, anything like that. Keep it all safe at home. When it comes to connecting to other networks at school or taking it out there, a lot of things could happen beyond just malware infection. You could lose it. You could have your physical security compromised by some kid who thinks he's some mild amateur hacker, plugs in a USB and then infects your kid's laptop with a rat or some other type of spyware and uses that for nefarious purposes. Who knows? Or even just trolling. So you want to do things like make sure that there's a strong password on the laptop, similar to what we talked about before. Use multiple words and use a phrase if you can. It also comes to using the encryption feature. A lot of modern laptops, a lot of modern operating systems have the ability to encrypt a hard drive without, so making it possible for the user to get to their files, but making it difficult for someone who can't break into the account to extract the files from the hard drive. So that is a good idea in my opinion. There are other things you could do. There are hardware locks you could put on laptops that already exist out there. Just a little thing you plug into it and suddenly it'll run. You take it out, put it on your keychain, it won't run anymore. And then there's the basic kind of monitoring software, parental monitoring software, which I'm not going to really get into. But we have a blog post about it, about having the conversation with your kid. Hey, I want to put the software on your computer. It's not meant to spy on you all the time. It's meant to keep you safe. And of course, they're going to think otherwise. And I mean, I can only imagine how difficult this conversation would be with a parent to a kid. But for me to a camera, it's pretty easy. Next to talk about is the social networks at school. And apparently, and this wasn't around when I was in school, but some schools have their own social networks. Excuse me. Or groups or things like that, where students, I guess, can share information and be social and things like that. Keep in mind, this is just as bad as Facebook or Twitter or anything else. And not necessarily bad, but just as it creates an opportunity for someone to steal your personal information. So your kids should also be aware that even these kind of social networks that seem like they're more secure than the regular one, and they may or may not be, who knows, are still not a good place to go posting, pictures that are going to be, used to compromise your identity or compromise your location or something like that. What else? So we talked about how to protect yourself from malware. Just in general security when it comes to teaching kids about what certain malware attacks look like. I mean, if your kid sees a ransomware attack, what does that look like? What are they supposed to do? Have you talked to your kids about that? Are they going to try to use their own Bitcoin? I mean, do they have Bitcoin? I don't know. But what about different types of attacks? What about an attack that puts pornography on the system or something like that? You need to have this conversation with your kids and let them know that that despite everything, they need to communicate with you if there's something wrong with their computer, and they need to stop using it immediately if they're suspicious of someone compromising it, because someone could be spying on your kid right now for all you know. I don't like to freak people out, but that's really the reality of it. So that is kind of the big stuff that we talked about. Monitoring software, security stuff, good passwords, make sure you back up, staying off of unprotected networks or unfamiliar networks. And then, of course, the social media aspect, taking a little bit of time away from the computer if you can, and trying to really enrich the experience, in my opinion. I myself, I'm kind of a gamer sometimes, and I can really get into a game, and I can end up playing it for hours and hours and hours and hours and days if I let myself. But then after the first couple hours, I'm like, wow, this is terrible. I don't want to play this anymore, but I have to because I need that level, or I need that item, or I need to get that new dance or something like that. But if you limit yourself to just 2 hours a day, or say, look, I'm going to knock out the chores, I'm going to knock out my homework, and then my parents have agreed that they'll let me play games for the rest of the night till I go to bed, man, what a great night that's going to be. All right, you feel accomplished, and then at the same time, you get to play your game. So it's something to think about, something that would work for me when I was a kid, and maybe helpful to you as parents, and maybe helpful to those of you who are not parents who are watching. So let's go ahead and go to some of these questions, and we are live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. So feel free to submit your questions on any of those platforms, and our producer, Lily, is going to get them for me. So first question, how often should I back up my stuff? It matters how paranoid you are. It matters how the place that you're usually using your computer in. I'd say, and of course it matters the information on your system. I would say that if for an incremental backup, just, gradual changes that happen, once a day would be nice, especially if you've got important schoolwork and documents on there, because malware is so rampant, and because you've got other kids who may try to attack your laptop. It's a good idea to keep those things backed up, preferably to a cloud backup or something secured that nobody else can get into. So that's kind of the first recommendation. If you don't have anything that vital, maybe once a week, and if you rarely use the computer at all, then you back it up every time you use it, basically, if you want to maintain the changes you've made and things like that. Question 2, is it safe to connect to the school Wi-Fi? Is it safe to connect to an airport Wi-Fi? Ask yourself that question. And the reality is that it's safe, but you need to be careful while you're on there. A school Wi-Fi, if it's anything like most of the organizations we have to deal with, they usually don't have the budget or the funding for a in-depth and totally experienced security team. They may have 1 or 2 people, and they're doing the best they can to keep an entire school, thousands of computers, safe. But people are going to get around that. People are going to find vulnerabilities, and therefore the Wi-Fi could be used as a attack mechanism, basically. So as long as you're utilizing security software and you've locked down your computer as much as you could beforehand, your passwords are strong and things like that, and you don't go on there and go to your banking website or go on there and start posting weird pictures and things like that through the network, the things that may not be, you wouldn't want other people to see, then it's probably going to be fine. Is it safe to leave my laptop in my dorm room? It matters how much you trust your dorm mates, I guess, but I would highly recommend locking it up in a safe if you're not going to be there. If you're sharing a room with someone else, or take it with you. If you don't trust them, then absolutely get a safe. But at the same time, you talked about before, backing up everything, putting some additional security on that particular laptop, like encrypting the hard drive, like putting the hardware security, the hardware lock on there. All good things to do if you're really worried about your laptop being stolen from either people entering your dorm or people you don't know entering your dorm. Should I have one password for all social media pages, or use a password manager with unique passwords for each page? I personally am a fan of password managers. I think that you can create far more complex and unique passwords with a password manager that you don't have to try to remember. You won't have to reset your password so many times. So as long as you make that master password that you use to secure all of them very secure. So I'm talking about, when I said a phrase, talk about a paragraph, okay? Make this password so secure that only you would ever think of it. And then all the other passwords, you can generate them. They could be 24 characters that all don't make any sense, and that's fine because the password manager knows what the password is. You don't have to remember it. That's my personal recommendation. That's what I think. A lot of people think otherwise. I've heard the argument that, hey, because you have that one master password, if someone cracks that, they have all your passwords. Sure, anything's possible, man. But at the same time, you got to put the eggs in the basket you're most comfortable with. And in my opinion, not trying to remember 15 to 20 different passwords, all incredibly complex at the same time, is probably a better solution to just have them with one password, and that's all you have to do. Next question, what steps can I take to storing my laptop securely? Well, I've kind of already answered this question a few times in a few different ways, but I always recommend a safe, especially if you're in a hotel or something. Use that safe they've got in there. You can set the number to lock it, and if someone manages to break into it, then you can go to the hotel. But leave it on your bed or leaving it, in your bag. If when you leave the room, maybe not the best idea in the world. You could also do something like put a biometric scanner, on your laptop and scan your fingerprint or something like that. You could hide it in some saw-like trap where the only way to get into it is to, press the right series of buttons. You press the wrong one, and it kills you or something. That's the best way to secure things. That's how I do it. So, moving on. Are schools and students a big target for cyber criminals? Yes. Schools have all of these systems. They're usually not secured as extensively as you would for like a profitable, top enterprise organization that that has a whole security staff of dozens of people, all watching all traffic coming in at all times. And students fail, unfortunately, to use security tactics because in many cases they haven't experienced it yet. They haven't they hadn't been hacked before. They haven't had malware on the system before. Well, I know the first time I got infected, I was like 14. So, and I was like a super computer nerd, so of course I'm going to get infected with something. But for the regular people, if you don't have the experience to say, oh wow, I don't want this thing to happen to me again, then you will just assume it'll never happen to you. And unfortunately, that's not the greatest opinion to have, because cybercrime can happen to anybody at any time. Don't think that you're too good for it, or you're too smart for it, or you're too sly for it. The attacks are constantly evolving, and one of them is going to find a way to infect you. You're going to fall for one of them, because even the best security people in our industry still occasionally will be like, is this legitimate? Maybe. Let's check it out. We're all paranoid, but we're all human. Next up, as a school, what can we do to keep our systems and the information of our students safe? Well, first of all, you got to lock down the network. Make sure that there aren't just rogue access points or rogue systems on the network that people can connect to from the outside. If you're going to have internet available on your school network, then you have to really lock down the other ports so that nobody else could use those systems to launch like a backdoor malware. Even in the case of games, I mean, I don't think it's something I would regularly see to have someone playing a popular video game on a school computer. I could be wrong, but you can usually lock down the ports that game would use, or any other games would use, so that they can't be used. I mean, you can't utilize that game on the system, and therefore other types of software that may be installed will have a difficult time getting through. Next up, you're going to want to make sure that you lock down these endpoints. Don't give everyone admin rights. Give everyone the least amount of rights they need, and then move on. Otherwise, someone could try to install something manually or automatically, and if they have the right permissions on the network, then they can get in and it can spread like wildfire. But as far as keeping security or the information safe, keep it all encrypted, back it up to a secure database or file server or something like that uses multi-form authentication if you can. Keep that information out of the hands of the bad guys, and that's not that difficult to do. It may increase accessibility a little bit if you don't currently have it, but at the same time, the chances, or rather the detriment of having to wait a few more seconds to get access to your file because it's decrypting it for you outweighs losing all your student files to cyber criminals who then steal their parents' identity or something. Question 8. Do you suggest excuse me. Do you suggest school administrators use MBAM corporate or enterprise? Yeah. I mean, of course. That's a weird question for me to answer, but I mean, yeah, pushing our own product at the same time. I think that our product is amazing. You can really do a lot of good things with our enterprise product, as far as using our kind of a remote console. It allows you to control all of the endpoints in your school or in your network from one central point, run a scan, remove things, etc., etc. The capabilities of that product gets better and better every year, so I highly recommend it. Any tips for social media security? Yeah, delete your social media. It's a fad. Okay, it's not going to be around again in the next 10 years. No. Social media is unfortunately here to stay. I think because it kind of started when I was in high school myself, and it's been going ever since. Friendster, MySpace, Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc. There's things that I don't even know how to use anymore. Because of just how fast the evolution of this technology has come. But the best way to stay safe on Facebook is to, make sure, any social media, make sure you lock down who can see your information. I mean, everything should be on private unless they are a friend that you added personally. Okay? Don't have it so you can add friends of friends, or that your friends of friends of friends can see your pictures, or everyone can see your pictures, because I mean, first of all, those things are private. They're yours and they're for you and your friends. Second, there could be information that could be derived from those images. Excuse me. There's a lot of stuff in the air around here in Northern California, folks. They could derive some information or intelligence from those images or from the status updates or whatever you put out there that could compromise your physical security if you're not careful. Trolls and bullies and things like that could use stuff you post for ammo, so be careful about that. Just think about it, okay? That's something that I hear about a lot today, is that people just post. They don't think. Stop posting, get your hand off the phone, put it down, think about what you're going to write for a second, think about who it could affect, think about who it could hurt, think about what it could do to your image, and then go ahead and post it if it's still good. I mean, that's just the best advice that apparently a lot of people have unfortunately forgotten. So, question 10, any tips for using public school devices such as library computers? Yeah, with computers like that, only save things that you're supposed to save, Back when I was in school, we had, like one, each of us had one like Apple II, and there was folders on it for every single student. And you go in there and you have to drop your assignment in there, or the instructions were in there, and they were, locked down moderately, so that you couldn't just steal other people's things. But regardless, I'm sure that a lot of libraries at school and other places still have computers that kids could use for free, and every classroom probably does as well. So don't do anything personal on those systems. Don't update your status on Facebook. Don't go and check your bank account information. Don't log into your you can log in your email. It should be secure and fine, but regardless, it's probably better not to. If you can do it from your phone, then do it from your phone. The reason you're using a library computer is probably because of research purposes, so just keep it to that. Schoolwork, research, get off of there, go home, use your own laptop, do whatever you want. Should schools offer security awareness training for staff and students? I absolutely believe that should happen. Education is one of the most important aspects to fighting cybercrime. And not just, and I mean, for those of you that have been following, me and Malwarebytes, and for what we've been talking about a lot, you'll know that I've said this so many times. But for everyone else, some of the most effective attacks when it comes to cybercrime don't require the user, or don't require exploitation of the system. It's exploitation of the user, and what we call social engineering. But you get an email that says, hey, this is a PDF that's important for you. You should open up and read it. And they do something depending on your particular situation. It could be, there's a package waiting for you. Here's the slip. There's a problem with your bank. Here's a statement. Here's the pay raise for next year, And then inside of that particular document or whatever, the email itself is the malware, which is now completely circumvented your security efforts on and keeping stuff off your network, because a user just didn't know how to recognize a malicious email. So you need to make sure that students and staff are educated on how to not just use the computers, but how to keep them safe, how to lock them at the end of the day, how to create strong passwords, how to avoid places that look sketchy, how to set up their computer so that they can go to websites they may not trust, but in a safe way. I mean, all these things are possible, all these things are simple, and I'm sure that a lot of students probably already know them, but they're not teaching it in school, from what I understand, and that's a problem. So if you're out there and you run a school and what they're going to be teaching, then you should definitely add a cybersecurity safety program. I think it would be very beneficial. And you know what? It shouldn't even be an elective. It should just be part of what you do in homeroom. Just every day, here's a tip on cybersecurity. There you go. Moving on. Should schools have an incident response plan in place? Absolutely. Any organization that is large enough to really be hit by a cyber attack or any sort of attack, and it would compromise, information or the liveliness of any students or faculty, needs to have some sort of plan in place if and when an attack occurs. This is to, first of all, reduce the spread of the attack All right, if you can identify quickly which endpoint has been infected, then you can go in there and say, all right, close this one down, lock it up from the rest of the network, make sure it hasn't spread, because a lot of malware out there can spread unilaterally through networks utilizing various exploits or even physically. And so you want to make sure that that kind of thing is locked down. You want to make sure that you know which kind of data to make sure is secure and safe. Your teachers and your staff know what to do if there is a cyber attack, how to quickly help your IT team in order to secure the school. And then what happens next? What do you do next? What is the next procedure? Do you just go back to normal? Do you scan everything? Do you have a wallet of Bitcoins ready to pay for some ransom? It's entirely up to you, but at the end of the day, having that plan is going to save a lot of man hours and a lot of money. What is the biggest cyber threat to critical infrastructure? That is a weird question that's kind of outside the scope of what we're talking about here. But thanks a lot, Lily. Appreciate that. As far as critical infrastructure for a school goes, I mean, any sort of malware can attack a school. And we've seen ransomware attacks. We've seen spyware attacks. We've seen Baker Trojans being installed. We've seen Bitcoin miners being installed. So it's really all open up there. If you're talking about critical infrastructure in the sense of like the Department of Energy, of like nuclear reactors and stuff like that, the biggest danger is honestly APT, state-sponsored malware. And I only say that because we've seen it happen so many different times in different countries. In Iran, in the US, in other places, cyber criminals are constantly trying to break into these organizations. And the big guns, the big governments usually are the ones that have the resources to find the new exploits, to deploy a team, to do the hard work of actually breaking into these places, or to bribe someone into infecting it, for them. So those are the biggest threats, honestly. And the problem with APT is that it's custom designed to avoid all detection methods, and it's not out there in the wild. It's not like you're going to just stumble upon it. More than likely, it'll be targeted against the attacker. And with the exception being a couple instances of like Flame and Stuxnet that just showed up in weird places, for the most part, these things are very limited in their attack scope, and you probably won't see them out in the wild. But if you are someone trying to protect that network, then that is unfortunate. Good luck. Do you recommend Google or Apple's password manager? I don't recommend anything Google or Apple's password manager. It seems like if you have one device, you're kind of stuck using it. But I'm not really sure about that. I like things that are just kind of browser add-ons, LastPass, 1Password. I prefer to stay away from brand-specific things, proprietary things. But I mean, it's entirely up to you. So I have no opinion on that one. So this is the final question. I know that we've kind of been going really quick here, and maybe I'll answer this one very slowly. So along with Malwarebytes, do you recommend running additional security software? Yeah, I mean, it depends, really. If you're a home user, then you can run ad blockers, in your browser. If you want to have Windows Defender running in the background, it's free. It's decent, it's not a bad AV for a lot of the really old stuff. It catches that kind of stuff, along with using Malwarebytes or something very similar. And then for the corporate side, our enterprise software is really used is a complete replacement for things. So any additional security software that you would use, I would recommend, like I said before, ad blockers, kind of external security things that would focus on the endpoint, not necessarily stopping malware, but stopping infection mechanisms or infection venues. Excuse me. All right, folks. Well, that's it for our live stream. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I really hope that you got something from these back-to-school tips. And thank you for spending half an hour with me on Monday morning. I really appreciate that. If you have any additional questions, please, put them in there, and we'll try to answer them through social media. Otherwise, if you want to see us do this again with some other kind of topic, give your ideas out there. What would you like us to talk about? What would you like us to teach you guys about? Just let me know. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.